This is Travis J. Vernon, and welcome to today's podcast. What I thought I'd talk about today is one of the most amazing places I was able to experience when I was in the Minnesota and Wisconsin area. Ended up going out there after college, and one of those friends was the scoutmaster. And when he found out that I knew how to fly fish and that I was a fly fishing guide all through college, he thought it would be fun for me to take a trip with them and the scouts and teach the scouts how to fly fish. And what he told me was that we were going to go up to this place called the Boundary Waters. At the time, I had no idea what the Boundary Waters were. I hadn't even heard of them before. I was pretty far out of my comfort zone after chasing elk and mule deer and fly fishing for trout my whole life, to head out to a place that there were so many lakes, I would never be able to fish them all in a lifetime. And then to learn that there was another place on the Canadian border that there were so many lakes within 15, 20 square miles that I would never be able to fish in a lifetime. I thought it would be a great opportunity for me to head up with the scouts and spend some time with the young men and teach them how to fly fish. Now, the first time I went into the Boundary Waters, we drew a permit, which the Boundary Waters is a permit-only area, so you have to put in for that. But when you draw your permit, it's to go in at a specific location on a specific day. And you have to do this quite a ways in advance. I think the most recent trip I took to the Boundary Waters, I put in for my permit in January, and I knew that I had drawn it by February or March, I believe. I don't remember 100%. But on the most recent trip, I went to show my wife Nancy how amazing the Boundary Waters were. And it's amazing to me as I talk to people about it, that not a lot of people even know about this place. Now, I've been very fortunate in the trips that I've had up there to have pretty decent weather. There was a touch of rain on the very first trip on the way in, but it wasn't bad. Most people up there use canoes. But on this trip, I had a small single-person kayak. So I took my kayak in, and the scouts took 3 canoes. And what's fun about the Boundary Waters is once you draw that permit and go in on that day, you can stay in there as long as you'd like. There's different portages. You paddle across whatever lake you start on, get to a portage, go to the next lake, go to the portage, go to the next lake, and you can stay in there forever. It is an absolutely amazing place. Each of the lakes is a little bit different. Some have lake trout. There's a few that have some brook trout, pike, walleye, perch, smallmouth bass. And it's just one of those places where you're in the absolute wilderness and you can experience things that others don't get to experience. And this is one of those catch-22s where I wish more people knew about it and I wish more people went and experienced it. But part of what makes the experience out there amazing is that you don't run into a ton of people. I guess that's why I like the wilderness everywhere I go. But like any place else, the more time you spend exploring and the harder you work, the fewer people you see. So on this trip with the young men, we ended up going in near Poplar Lake off the Gunflint Trail by the Rockwood Lodge. And the Rockwood Lodge, if you've never been to the Boundary Waters and have no idea what I'm talking about, you can look that up. The Rockwood Lodge and Outfitters. They have canoe rentals and they have little cabins. You could do day trips from there, but if you're going to spend the time in the Boundary Waters, you really should go in and experience this place. It is absolutely spectacular. Now, on the day you draw the permit, it might be nuke and rain. That's the day that you have to go in. So that can be difficult for some if you're not used to that kind of weather. They do have guides at different locations that can take you in. One of the neat things about the Boundary Waters is they have designated camping spots. So each lake will have a number of designated camping spots, and you have to stay at one of those. They will have a latrine, and they will have a metal cooking grate in a fire area. Outside of that, you pretty much just have to paddle and find the one that you want to stay at. You can go, as I said, from lake to lake to lake. You can spend days, weeks, months in the Boundary Waters. You don't have to take a canoe, although I like taking canoes. If you've never paddled the canoe and decide you want to go on one of these trips, make sure you either, one, take a guide, or two, practice before you go. Spend some time learning how to paddle. It's not as easy as everybody thinks it is, but it's important to understand, if you tip your canoe, how to dry it out, how to get your gear out. But you don't have to go very far to be in absolute God's country. You can make big loops where you go in at one lake and you come out someplace completely different. You can start at a lake, go explore 15, 20 different lakes and come back to your point of entry. Or you can do what I've done on 2 different trips up there. I get to the campground I want and I spend 3 days in that as my base camp or my spike camp. And then from there, I'll travel and fish and explore and go other places, always coming back to the same campground. This first trip was a little bit different for me because this is the first time I'd ever portaged my kayak. It wasn't super heavy, but it wasn't super light. And while it worked, you're limited to the number of people and the number of water vehicles you're allowed to take in on the day of your permit. So we were maxed out at, I believe it was 9 people and 4 boats. So 3 canoes and a kayak. We paddled in maybe 7 or 8 miles, found the campsite that we wanted to camp at. And the boys spent the rest of the time learning survival techniques, setting up camp, cooking over a fire, playing in the water, swimming, having water wars, sinking each other's canoes. And it was just an amazing experience. So when Nancy and I got married, we had talked about it. She'd heard me tell the stories, but she'd never experienced anything like that growing up in the West. So we decided to take a trip, visit some friends in Minnesota. I put out a general invitation, as I often do when I'm traveling someplace. If anybody wants to tag along, they're welcome to go with me. They can experience these same things. It's always fun to have a couple people go. And on the most recent trip, my good friend Chuck decided he would go with us. Now, 9 times out of 10, when somebody says, yeah, I'm going to go, they don't show up. I have 3 friends that if they say they're going, they're going to go. My friend Chuck in Minnesota, my friend Ross in Park City, and my friend Seth from South Dakota. Those 3 guys, if they tell you they're coming, they're coming. And it makes it really fun because all 3 are great friends. So on this occasion, Chuck said that he was going to go with us. He didn't have a canoe, wasn't really familiar with canoeing. I told him I'd basically guide him in, and all we needed to do was head up there. So we had planned to rent a car, but Chuck said, don't worry about it, he'll bring his truck. So Chuck picked us up at the airport. He had all his stuff ready to go. We drove straight from the airport north up the Gunflint Trail to northern Minnesota, up to the Rockwood Lodge where we had rented 2 canoes. Now, Nancy and I had gotten an ultralight canoe that we could take in, just the 2 of us. We were able to rent the canoes and the life jackets. Everything else we packed with us. We had 2 dry bags. We kept all of our camping gear in that. Basically my standard backpack camping gear, just thrown into a dry bag instead. Chuck opted to go to a single person canoe, and instead of using a canoe paddle, opted to use a kayak paddle, which is a great option if you want to go solo or if you just want a single canoe for you. So on the way up to Rockwood Lodge, we stopped for lunch, and Chuck had asked Nancy what she felt like eating, and it came up that she'd never had fried cheese curds. So we had to stop and get fried cheese curds for Nancy. There are so many fun little idiosyncrasies when you get around different parts of the world, different parts of the country. And it's fun to explore both the people and the locations. So on that very first day, we end up getting to the Rockwood Lodge pretty late. We spent the night there and then went in first thing the next day. We got our life jackets, got our canoes. Nancy and I got loaded up, got in the canoe, pushed off, and we're just sitting offshore on the lake. Chuck gets in his canoe, gets everything loaded up, starts to push off, starts to get the wobbles, panics, and flips his canoe 4 feet from shore. So all of his gear is in the water. He jumps up. The lodge staff runs down, helps right his canoe, gets all the water out, gets his gear, reload him. They hold it for him so he can get in. The entire time there's a couple ladies standing at their cabin, sipping their coffee in the early morning, just saying, oh no, oh no. Such a Midwestern thing. I just absolutely love it. So now that his panic moment and embarrassment are over, we paddle out. And we went a few miles, got to our first portage, went up and over, got to the next lake, got to the next portage. It was a longer portage. Ended up taking that portage, and we got back in after a few portages and a few lakes into a spot that I had seen before, and it was a sheltered little cove, only one campsite on that whole part of the lake. And I thought, man, it would be kind of nice if we could get that to use as our base camp, just because it was so secluded. As luck would have it, we were able to get the campsite. Nobody was there. Got our camp set up, threw out a line to fish for a second while I was setting up the tent, and Nancy caught her first walleye. Beautiful walleye. So I was pretty excited about that. There's a lot of rules and restrictions because it is the wilderness area. We ended up taking in leeches to use as walleye bait, and that was spectacular. Just a standard jig head with a leech on it under a slip bobber was ideal for where we were fishing. And over the course of the next 4 days, we had a few meals that weren't walleye, but most of the time we were eating fresh walleye, fried in a cast iron skillet, because that is something I will pack in. I will take the weight of a cast iron pan. Whether I'm in a canoe or a backpack, I like having a good cast iron pan on a cook fire. Now, I'll also preface that if it's 6 or 7 miles in and it's a steep piece of country and I really don't need the added weight, I'll do more hobo dinners and cook over a flat rock or with some tinfoil, but I prefer cast iron. But there's nothing quite like a fresh shore lunch of walleye and fried potatoes and onions in the Boundary Waters. I can't even begin to explain how amazing that place is. The mosquitoes weren't terrible. They got a little bad evening and mornings, but a little bit of bug spray kept you fine. We ended up spending a ton of time fishing and exploring and just paddling around. Nancy got her first big walleye. Well, I can't even say that. It wasn't her first walleye of the trip. She'd caught walleye before in North Dakota. She did catch her very first pike, so that was fun for her. We had a couple of walleye that we left on the stringer that we caught right at dark. We thought, well, we'll just have those two for breakfast. Woke up in the morning and there were 15 turtles and no walleye. Lesson learned. I forget that there's things like that out there. We just don't have to worry about stuff like that. But up in the Boundary Waters, there's a bunch of turtles. Neat to see. We had one evening where the wolves came in pretty close to where we were camped. It's a combination of both eerie and majestic and scary and amazing listening to the wolves in the evenings. And you don't always hear them. The first trip I had up there, I didn't hear wolves at all. This most recent trip, there were a lot of wolves up there. It is a bear-aware kind of area. Black bears, no grizz. But you have to make sure you have the equipment that you need to keep your food up off the ground. Never ran into any bears on any of the trips I've been out there, but I'm pretty safe with my food, and I know what to do to stay away from bears. One thing I love to do when I'm in the backcountry is I like to carve a lot of my own utensils. And on this trip, we found a downed cedar tree, and we ended up carving some spoons and fish and different things. And I made a spatula that I still use in my kitchen to this day. A wooden spatula that I made out of cedar on this trip. It's just one of those places and experiences that, as much as I hope you guys go, it's surprising to me every time I talk about it and how few people actually do. Now, the reason they call it the Boundary Waters is because it is on the border with Canada, and it crosses over into Canada. So there's the Canadian side of the Boundary Waters and the American side. And you do have to be cognizant of where you are and have your passport if you plan on going over the border. You also have to have your permit with you when you're in there, because you may run into the Forest Service and they will check your permit to make sure that you're licensed or permitted to be in there. We planned on spending 5 days in the Boundary Waters, but we were only able to spend 4. I shouldn't say we were only able to. We opted to only spend 4 because when we had reception before we went in, the last day showed a storm starting to roll in, and it was a pretty severe storm. So we decided to leave 1 day early to get out, and it's good that we did. By the time we had camp broken and we're heading out, the weather was getting pretty rough. The last lake we had to cross, which is Poplar Lake, right at the Rockwood Lodge. From where we came out of the portage to get back to the lodge, there were white caps. It was a rough paddle. I was worried for Chuck. He was pretty stressed, but he ended up just hugging the coastline, staying out of the wind. Made his paddle about 4 miles longer than Nancy and I's paddle, but there were some dicey spots out there for sure. But very, very worth it. If you've never heard about the Boundary Waters, look them up, do a little research. If you have the means to go experience it, definitely go do it. It is such an amazing place. Enjoy all these natural wonders that we have in our own country. I tend to look outside and travel to other countries all the time, dream of going to different places, and there's so many places like this that are near that you can experience that people just don't. So if you enjoy the wilderness, enjoy fishing, enjoy canoeing or paddling, camping in amazing places, the chances of seeing the northern lights in the Boundary Waters is very high. It's just an amazing place. The water is exceptionally clean and pure. So I hope you get out and are able to experience the Boundary Waters. If nothing else, I hope I've opened your eyes to a place you didn't know about before. If you have been there before, please hit me up if you have questions or concerns, and get out there and live your stories.